The amount of information you need to know about controlled unclassified information, or CUI, seems like it's never ending. Although that might sound like a defeatist statement, it's not. You see, CUI is only going to continue to grow and change in terms of its definitions and how to market because of where the Department of Defense, or DoD, is actually headed. But where is the DoD headed, and why is CUI going to continue to change? Well, if you've been keeping up with the Department of Defense at all, you're likely all too familiar with the new favorite four-letter acronym cmmc. You see, the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification is a new requirement that's going to affect almost the entire ecosystem of contractors and subcontractors who provide tools that protect us from foreign adversaries. CUI is a massive part of achieving CMMC. In many cases, it's actually the delineation factor used to determine what level of CMMC you need to achieve as an organization. That's why it's so important to understand how to not only identify CUI your organization deals with, but also mark it correctly based on what category of CUI it falls under. In a previous video, I explained how and when to use traditional CUI markings. If you didn't watch that one yet, you should, but only after you watch this video. Anyway, the other category of CUI markings is called non-traditional. Hi everyone, I'm Matt from eTactics, and today I'm going to explain how and when to use non-traditional CUI marking. Before we get started though, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel by clicking the button below. While you're down there, hit the alert bell icon next to it as well, so when we post new helpful content, you get notified. The first non-traditional CUI marking I need to cover is the CUI Cover Sheet. In some instances, it's more convenient to use a cover sheet which can replace CUI banners and heading. This is helpful when limited on space at the top of a document or a form. Whereas previous markings involved many different types of cover sheets, the CUI program instituted a single standard cover sheet. Choosing to go the cover sheet route is static. In other words, it must be the CUI EA approved cover sheet standard form 901, and here's what that cover sheet looks like thanks to the GSA. As a cover sheet, SF901 goes on the top of a document and then stays there until the document no longer needs its protection. If the condition of the cover page is still in good shape after its initial use, you can reuse it. Standard form, or SF901, replaced forms OF901, OF902, and OF903 on December 14, 2018. If you happen to have any of those forms laying around by now, you can continue to use them, but only while supplies last. The cover page will include a CUI designation indicator, shown in this image provided by the DoD. The first line must identify the name of the DoD component who determined that the information was CUI. You may omit this if you are using letterhead or another standard indicator of origination. The second line must identify the office making the determination. The third line must identify all types of CUI contained in the document. The fourth line must contain the distribution statement or the dissemination controls applicable to the document. The fifth line must contain the phone number or office mailbox for the originating DoD component or authorized CUI holder. The second non-traditional CUI marking that I need to cover is CUI Labels. SF902 is a standard size label used to identify and protect electronic media such as hard drives or CD-ROM. SF903 is a label used to identify and protect electronic media such as USB drive. Do not remove either label after applying them. While it may not be practical to include the full designation of the category of CUI, when possible, there must be a clear label of controlled, or CUI, and the designating agency on the outside of these storage devices. The third non-traditional CUI marking is scenario-based. More specifically, I'm referring to forms with CUI. When you run into this scenario, you should use a CUI banner marking to identify forms filled in with information that qualifies as CUI. If there isn't enough space, you may use a cover sheet instead. The fourth non-traditional CUI marking deals with emailing. Marking CUI in an email is the same as marking CUI in other contexts. As a best practice, the subject line may also state the email contains CUI. To mark CUI in the subject line of an email, add bracket contains CUI bracket at the end of the subject line. Banner markings must appear above the email text containing CUI. File names for any attachments containing CUI may also include an indicator that alerts the recipient of the presence of CUI. Be sure to include and carry forward all applicable markings when forwarding or responding to emails that contain CUI. As an example, moving the banner marking back to the top of the email. This is optional, what I'm about to tell you, but emails can also be portion marked in the same manner as in a document. Fifth, let's talk about presentation. Mark PowerPoint or slide presentations if the content contains CUI. The basic rules of marking CUI apply in this instance. Two mandatory components that you must include are a designation indicator and a banner marking. As with a document containing CUI, add category markings if the slides contain specified CUI. Sixth, marking transmittal document. When sending faxes that contain CUI, the document should contain a transmittal message as an indication. The document must also have a clear message of either when enclosure is removed, this document is uncontrolled unclassified information, or when enclosure is removed, this document CUI category, upon removal, this document does not contain CUI. When reproducing or faxing, you may use agency-approved equipment. Agencies may put signs on agency-approved equipment. Seventh, marking audio, video, and/or image files. There are various ways to mark CUI contained in audio or video files, or even in photographs. If applicable, include categories, subcategories, and limited dissemination marking. For digital photographs, insert a watermark with the photo with the appropriate marking. Only mark pictures containing CUI within a document if they are removable or in an unmarked section of the document. For photos in physical form, label the back of the photo, place the photo in a marked envelope or folder. For video files, include in the opening section of the video a black screen with the text, "This video contains controlled unclassified information." If the video contains CUI specified, place the appropriate CUI marking below the disclaimer. Only use this method if permitted by law or government policy. Mark the storage media with the appropriate CUI marking. For audio files, include in the opening section a statement that reads, "This recording contains controlled unclassified information." You also need to include a reading of the appropriate marking as well. Also, mark the storage media with the appropriate marking too. Eighth and finally, shipping CUI. As a best practice, use in-transit automated tracking to record the progress of your shipment from departure to arrival. Mark the contents of packages, but do not place markings on the outside of packages or envelopes. CUI may be shipped through the following: interagency mail systems, United States Postal Service or USPS, and/or other commercial delivery services. Non-traditional CUI markings are necessary to know, especially since they cater specifically to the electronic, modern world that we operate our organizations within every day. Between watching this video and watching our other one about traditional CUI markings, you now have an understanding of how to mark CUI based on what's provided by the Department of Defense. Now get out there and start marking your CUI. If you'd like to learn more about marking CUI, reach out to eTactics. And you already made it this far into the video, so you might as well like it, share it, and comment below. What are you waiting for? Subscribe to our YouTube channel.